So we're live. Welcome to the Node.js NAPI team meeting for the 8th of January 2021. I always got to remember to say 2021 now. We have a special guest, Darshan, here, who we're going to talk about a couple of issues that he's opened and we haven't had a chance to get to take a look at. So we're hoping that that will help us close on them more quickly. And then we'll get back to the regular agenda where we look at the issues we've tagged for Milestone 11. So Darshan, do you want to take us through the two issues that you have opened? No, we do seem to be having a few connectivity type issues. So it looks like we may have lost them for right this second. Maybe we'll just go back to the things we have tagged and we can do that and then switch back once he's rejoined. Let me get back over there. Choose Milestone 11. Oh, I think I probably need to re-promote him. Sorry. Okay, I think you're back, Darshan.
Yes, I am.
Okay, so if you want to take us through those two issues, I don't know which works more easily for you. Do you want to share your screen or do you want me to open them and share my screen? I can do either one.
It would be better if I share my screen.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, this is the first one.
And what's the purpose of this PR and what's it trying to solve and everything like that?
This one.
Right, if you can just give us
like,
sort of the background.
That the index file over here, yes, I noticed that this file, the main purpose of this file is to supply the flags for Node.js and then start a new process of Node.js running the same file as a child process. But it's doing few extra work, so I thought of removing it.
Makes sense.
Initially, it was computing the test module over here, and no, sorry, not here. Yeah, this is the place. Over here, and we are getting rid of each of the files based on the new version. And this is being repeated once again in the child process. And I think it's better if we do this right in the child process itself. So this is what the PR is about.
So, okay, sorry, which piece is being done in both the child and the parent process?
The test module generation, this one, it's being computed here, and then based on the node version, the files are getting removed.
Getting removed, right? Yeah, like we only run the tests which are appropriate to the version. So, okay, that makes sense. But I guess, so you're saying that we did that twice versus once?
So when I'm looking at this PR, my understanding is that you've moved the starting of the child process from the bottom of the script to the top of the script so that all of the calculations that are done, such as what tests to run and stuff, will only be done in the child process instead of both.
Yes,
That's
exactly. That was
sort of
my
what I'm
impression too. Yeah,
Okay, and it's never actually used in the parent process.
that's right.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Like if you just look at the previous index.js, like the first line is changing all of like the default configs and stuff like that. And all of that doesn't need to happen in the parent process, only in the child. So it really just moves the spawning to be like the first thing that gets done in the parent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Yep,
Okay,
agreed.
so functionally it's all the same, just yeah, okay, I understand now.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because we spawn a new process for every one of those tests, right?
No.
No, okay, no, we spawn one test, sorry, one test sub process then, but that which has the correct arguments and stuff.
Exactly, but there's no point.
Ah.
There's no point in splicing and slicing and dicing the
Sure.
list of tests to run if you're not going to run them in the process that you are. So
Okay.
yeah, it's basically like replace yourself with the process having the correct command line arguments even earlier before you start munging on the test list.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense.
I guess that looks good to me.
Okay, so that sounds good to me too. I will just add my LTGM if other people want to, and then we can go ahead and land that. And I think you had a second one?
Yes. This is the one. It's kind of based on what the comment said previously, and over here, before the test modules start, it says at FixMe, we might need a way to load test modules automatically without explicit declaration as follows. So I just got rid of this whole list and added my own code to just load all the file names. And there's an assumption here that is, to recurse, it should have a maximum depth of 1 only. I think
Right.
that's okay though.
Does I guess is that because if we don't assume a maximum depth of 1, it doesn't work, or just that you've set it at 1 versus more than 1?
I just did it for 1 because I don't think it's necessary for another depth.
I'm just thinking, like, is there any reason why we wouldn't support multiple depths? Like a lower depth as well.
It can definitely be possible, but I didn't see any case where that is there, so I didn't do it for now. But if
Yeah.
you want, I
Yeah.
can do it.
Yeah, I think right now we don't have any that are more than 1 depth, but in the future we may. So I think it makes sense to remove the depth limitation.
I could just imagine in the future, it's like, oh, well, they're just automatically found. Somebody puts it in a second level of depth, and it's like, well, why isn't it working, right? And unless there's some good reason, why don't we just do that now too? And I guess I'm sure you've looked at it, and like all the exact same tests get run, right?
Yeah, these are the exact same ones.
Yeah. And when it runs, we do see, I just don't remember the output off the top of my head. We do see the list of things that are run, right?
when it runs the test,
Yeah.
it outputs it. Yes, it says
Yeah. Okay.
running test name, and then it requires the file which
Right.
runs the test.
Okay. So it's easy to see the list that, even if we don't have this hard-coded list, it's easy to get that list of things that,
Right.
yeah. Okay.
Yes, I think my only change would be the removal of the depth requirement. And then I think it would be good.
I think the only thing that's coming to mind is there potential, like, do we need to add some documentation to or change some documentation? Do we have something that's talking about adding tests already?
Mm.
No,
Yeah, I don't think we.
If the
we don't
depth is
have.
1. Yeah, we don't.
Okay.
So if the depth is 1, doesn't it currently skip all the stuff in thread-safe function? Because like if I look at test, it has a subdirectory called thread-safe function, which has several JS files. So if the depth is 1, then does it not skip like thread-safe function ctx.js and thread-safe function existing tsfn.js and all those? Can we double check that it doesn't skip those? Because they are down 1 level from the test.
Right.
So then, if that's the case, then as it stands, then it needs the multi-level stuff even now.
And does the code search for names beyond index.js?
Yeah, I think it excludes index.js, knowing that that's not a test.
Okay.
So it's everything except .cc and those things. So yeah, I think we need like we need the multi-level thing. So I mean, basically recursion. And of course,
does it exclude index.js? I'm looking at it like I think I see if it exists /index, then it pushes it into the test modules.
So reader sync, if the file is not index.js, only then enter whatever it is that you're doing. Right? So these are all not equal.
Okay, I see. I was looking down below at line 26.
Okay, I see. So it assumes that if it's a directory, then the directory will have an index.js, which is the thing to test. Right. So okay. So if one of the entries in the directory is itself a directory, then it assumes that its structure is such that it is a self-contained test with entry point index.js, which is not the case, I don't believe.
Right.
Because we don't have anything like that. Let me go into test and see the subdirectories.
I just like, for the example you just covered, that's obviously not the structure, right?
Right, and neither is it for subdirectories. So subdirectories don't have an index.js, but they do have JS files which need to be run.
And I guess the question is, do we have any JS files which are not tests, like supporting JS files or?
I don't think so, not right now. So let me just double check. Okay, so what do we have here? We've got add-on build. What the heck is that? Add-on build. Yeah, okay, well, okay, add-on build has an index.js. So I guess that's sort of testing the way we build. Let me see, add-on build TPL, what is that? Yeah, okay, so the add-on build subdirectory has that structure, but not any of the others. So yeah, we were kind of inconsistent there.
Well, I think it's like, it makes sense if you've got one, but if you've got multiples.
I just checked the build that ran for his PR, and it does not run the add-on test.
Right.
It runs add-on data and add-on build, but not add-on. And that's the only one that appears to be missing.
Oh yeah, the addon.cc. But wait. Oh yeah, addon.js. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But I guess
okay, but
the question is, how is it running some of the other named ones?
yeah. Okay, well, either way, I think this PR requires closer scrutiny to make sure that it doesn't reduce our test coverage.
Unless I misspoke. Let me see. Add-on build.
I guess, sorry, there is, I mean, I guess there
Yeah,
is,
I did
Darshan,
misspeak.
an else there, right?
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, okay. So if it has the index.js structure, then assume it's an index.js thing. Otherwise, okay. Yes, that's true. Otherwise, just grab all the ones in there. Okay, so then it assumes a depth of 2, test itself and then subdirectories, which is currently correct.
Yes, and I misspoke with the running of the test. It looks like they're both the same.
Okay, so there are, so Darshan, it looks for that index.js, but the else then covers the case where there's otherly named files, right?
Yeah, that's what it looks
Sorry?
like. So basically, looking at your code that handles each entry given by read dir sync, the top level read dir sync, it looks like you handle the entry in one of 3 ways. Either it matches one of those file names in the long if statement and then you skip it, or it's a directory, in which case if the directory has an index.js, then you consider that to be the entry point. Otherwise, you iterate the directory, the subdirectory, and you take all the you seem to take all the files, is it? Substring zeros. Okay. Yeah, so you should probably, for the second case, like lines 28 and below, you should probably filter for JS files, because there may be CC files in there as well in the subdirectory, and I'm not seeing the place where you
I'm
filter
getting rid
for.
of the extension at line 32, and I'm getting rid of,
Oh, I see.
I mean,
Okay,
I'm
and you're
making them all
unikifying, yeah.
unique at line 41.
Okay, so that's okay, but I would still rather you you'd skip non.js, because it's conceivable, it doesn't currently happen, but it is conceivable that there are CC files which do not match any of the JS files, in which case you will assume that there's a JS file by that name, even though there isn't. So I think it would be safer to just filter for JS files and not assume that for every JS file there is an equally named CC file. Sometimes a module consists of more than one CC file. So it's not the case currently, but I think it would be safer to change it so that, if the file name is not JS, then continue. Or, only push if the file name is JS.
Okay.
And then you need not worry about turning it into a set, because the semantics of directories will ensure that there are no 2 JS files with the same name.
Okay.
So yeah, that would be my only suggestion, is to just filter for JS. I think that's pretty safe.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's good. So yeah, I think it sounds like everybody agrees this is a good concept. And just a few suggestions. The one that, doesn't necessarily need to be done in this PR, but it might be good for us to actually add a naming construct into this, so that, like, for example, everything which is a test starts with test underscore. so that like in the future, if we need like, you know, JavaScript files which are supporting files and which aren't tests, we don't actually try and run those.
Yeah, we have that in core.
So, you know, I think it doesn't need, you know, like I said, that could be a follow-on PR, but I think that's something that might actually be quite useful to do if you wanted to do that as well, which is to like basically rename every JS file, which is a test file, that starts so that it starts with test underscore, and then have this be updated to only run those as tests.
But what about the C++ files?
In terms of, like, we don't run those C++ files, right? Or, sorry, yeah. So what's the question there? Sorry.
Are those used in the tests?
They're definitely used, but they're only used through the JavaScript.
Okay.
Right, like the C files will be what build an add-on, but the add-ons are only accessed through the JavaScript test files, which require them and then run, you know, methods on you know, require them, which causes the C++ add-on to be loaded, and then we call methods on that add-on.
Okay.
So I think if you know, if we'd named them test underscore and then the current name .js, then it would be clear like what's the thing, what are the tests that you run, would avoid us from getting into trouble in the future. But like I said, that could be a follow-on. It doesn't, I don't think it needs to be part of this specific one.
Yeah, I agree. I think if with that one change to just filter for JS for .js right off the bat, this will be good.
I think and go down more than one level was the other comment.
Oh yeah, and go down more than one level. Yeah.
So those two things, like there's no reason to artificially limit it to one level.
Yeah,
and then
true.
to filter to JS files, then I'd be happy with this one too.
Yeah.
And then if you want to do a follow-on that you know, renames them to be test underscored at the start and filters it to that, that would be super great too.
Sure, I can do that.
Okay, well, thanks. Anybody have any other questions or discussion on this before we move on to the other things on the agenda? No? Okay, so I will share my screen at this point. And I will find milestone 11. So I'd added a number of issues for us to discuss here. I think maybe I'd suggest we discuss mentoring. Everybody should have gotten the email that was forwarded from the mentoring team who's working to find a mentoring candidate to work with us. And you know, kind of the idea I had is that we'd all help mentor that person as a team. We could talk, you know, we could use part of the meeting that we have weekly to discuss any issues that they have, sort of provide direction and guidance, as well as being available through, you know, offline chat one-on-one and kind of stuff. But I wanted to make sure everybody thought that was a reasonable idea, had any concerns, questions about the stuff that they forward us in terms of like they had an example, a sample task to try and, like, you know, look to figure out good matches for candidates and stuff like that.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I'd be on board for that, Michael.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it's good for me.
Okay, sounds good. And you know, of course, if you have any specific comments on the doc there, you can add them. And otherwise, yeah, we'll look forward to getting a mentee and get them ramped up. Just gonna say no concerns. Okay. Okay, the next thing I thought it would be good to touch base on was, oh, I should have given these. I should maybe put some of the context in them, but anyway, I didn't. Because there was the one about renaming an API.
Yeah, an API.
So I thought that's a good one to, so let me see if I can find that one. Nope.
No, it's the second.
It's okay. It's going to be the last one that I.
Yeah.
Oh
Like
well.
always.
Yep. Okay, so I don't know if people had caught this one, but there's a suggestion that we rename an API to something else. You know, I guess nappy is a term that's potentially derogatory, and an API sometimes gets, you know, just from the spelling, people use that at times instead of an API. Although we have been working to try and make sure people use an API versus anything else. So I wondered what we should. I mean, I guess we should talk about, like, do we think we agree with renaming, and if so, what, you know, what names would actually make sense or not.
I for one, am concerned with putting the word node in there because part of the API has nothing to do with node and everything to do with the engine itself, right?
Yeah.
And we've already, where the files already reflect that. So in a sense, that is an opportunity to detach the non-node specific stuff from node, right? So it can start with a letter other than N, at least those portions of the API. On the other hand, the fact that they are tied together is kind of traditional because they both started life as one API rather than two APIs. So,
but the NAPI actually is tied to Node in that it includes methods which are only available in Node and not JavaScript,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, right now the namespacing, if you can call it that, is the same for both, right? And so other engines implement a subset most often.
Right, they implement what's in the JS native API.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I was kind of thinking that Node API does match, like we've actually got includes which are Node API. Like our includes in Node are Node API, which then include the JS native API. So if we were going to refer to the two things, there's like a JS native API, which is a subset of Node API.
Yeah.
And so, but we're mostly, like in our docs, we're basically talking about the Node API because we have subsetted it, but we don't really talk too much about the JS subset.
Yeah, and we have one document covering both, basically.
Yeah.
Right, because we just have the napi.md, which covers everything, I believe.
Right.
So node and non-node. So yeah, it's hard naming as it always is. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we could go with node underscore API underscore, create underscore Boolean. That would be one choice.
Well, we can't really change any of the names.
No. I mean, in terms of aliasing, obviously, I don't mean. So for some length of time, which is probably counted in years, we would have a great big number of new symbols on the Node.js binary.
Actually, I was wondering, like, I don't think there's any change to the code, is what in my mind.
Well, it would have to produce two symbols for each function, right?
But let me just look. Maybe I thought we already were using Node in the names.
I don't know what you mean.
Yeah, let me just see. Like in the, I'm looking in Node API. Yeah, okay. So it is an API. All the symbols are named that. I was thinking that we'd said, because the file is Node API.
Yeah, but the symbols are all NAPI underscore this and that.
Yeah.
Is the concern primarily the public how it's publicly known, does the concern extend into the naming of the symbols? Like,
Well, yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, well, I think it does. If if you're gonna, in terms of other things like a blacklist and whitelist and stuff, it's been an effort to remove those from the code base.
So
Okay.
yeah, I think the fact is that in discussion, when you're talking about I know discussion is not something that happens often these days because we're all far away and we're mostly talking asynchronously to each other. But I believe that if you're having a face-to-face discussion and talking about calling various functions, you're going to call them, you're going to say something like, you need to use nappy create the async work.
Yeah.
And you need to, you need before you call, before you can assume the thread safe function is dead, you need to call nappy release thread safe function. And so that's what the discussion will sound like with the symbols as they are, right? Even if you make an effort to call the whole thing an API, it's just too cumbersome, I believe, to say, an API create Boolean, an API call thread safe function. People won't say that. It's just too convenient not to. So on the other hand, I don't know how cumbersome it will be to say, node API, create thread safe function.
Right.
I'm not sure that James was thinking about code changes, because you can't just update all the references. Like his comment about open a PR to update all the references, you just can't do that since it's a stable ABI and it's a stable ABI forever, right?
I know, but we can make it semver minor by providing both sets of symbols and then discouraging use of the former.
I'm just wondering whether he thought about the code part, because he didn't say add new things. He said
okay, yeah.
Update them all.
So let's ask the question, I think, right?
Yeah.
Is this going to go down to the symbols or not?
Right. Okay. And I guess so. We can add that's from the discussion in the team meeting, team 1.
Yeah.
And how would we duplicate those? Can you create aliases or?
Well, I was thinking you could probably, one way to do it would be to have the new function called the old function, but that's an extra function call, right? So you want to make that as cheap as possible. So the other solution that I thought about would be to just have them all be V8 impl. All the implementation, they're just V8 impl, and then both of them call that, and we make them inline. And so, but that would duplicate the code. That would double the code size, right? Because now if it got inline in 2 places, then that would be twice the code.
Right.
So
could they just be defined?
Yes, we could use C preprocessor macros. That's true. But then you're not really changing the symbols. So, but yeah, it's a complicated.
But we're not really removing the symbols either, right?
That's true. Yeah. So
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess yeah, providing a duplicate set of symbols is non-trivial if we want to keep the performance. And for us, every call counts because it's already so expensive to cross the boundary from JavaScript. Right. So we don't want to add any overhead if we can avoid it. Now the question is, how important is saving space, right? I mean, Node.js is usually used on servers where disk space Well, but I guess it's also memory space is quite an issue, right? So in terms of having like what is that called? The density of Node.js processes on any given server would be reduced if we greatly increased the code size, right? So we'd also have to check how much this increases the code size, because it would affect, budgets like that.
Right.
So if we did it in line. I don't know if there's sort of like a tooling level solution, like some kind of like GNU extension or something where you can alias a function and it will create two symbols, but it'll create like a very cheap sort of assembly level jump to the old symbol rather than a full-fledged function call. And I also don't know if having a function body that consists of a single call will be optimized down to that or not. So these kinds of things. We could do like a test to alias one of the APIs and see how much of a performance hit it is to just have a symbol call another method. If it's not too much, if it's like maybe like 0.5% because it gets optimized so heavily, then we might be fine to just create the whole new API and just have the functions called the old functions. If that's cheap enough, then we could go as deep as that.
So that's our one question. You suggested we change all the API call.
Can you maybe specify if where you say adding duplicate symbols could double code space if we use inlining of a common implementation? Because otherwise it doesn't.
Right, and then it's like or slow things down, requiring additional call for every method, right?
Yeah. Because it wouldn't double if we just did this calling.
In terms of naming, I guess, like I was looking at the names of the files, not thinking about having to change every single entry point.
Yeah.
We could add, if we're going to actually change, like create a whole new set of symbols, then we could in theory also create, change the name of the file. So there'd be two files, right?
Well, the name of the file I think is okay. I mean, Node API and JS native API and Node API types, JS native. I think those are okay. Like, how do you mean change the file? Which file?
Well, I guess the suggestions were SAPI or CAPI.
Oh, I see. Okay. So
and if we actually went to one of those, I don't think, like having something always referred to CAPI, but then you go and include something called Node API isn't as intuitive as like NAPI and Node API are, okay, they both have N in them, right?
Yeah, and I mean, at the point where you're transitioning, if you choose to transition to this new API, then giving you the convenience of not having to change the hash include statement at the top of the file is not much convenience at all, given the changes that you have to make. So yeah, we might as well rename them at that point.
So we can't rename them. We have to have a duplicate set.
Yeah. I mean, obviously by rename I mean like duplicate. Like I know we can't do that. So yeah, but I think it would still be like Node CAPI or something, because it's still Node, right?
Right.
So and since it is still Node, I mean, keeping it as Node API, it still makes sense. It's just that now the Node API has different prefixes, right?
Right. So that's where I'd sort of lean towards maybe Like my preference, I think, is Node API versus C API or S API or anything like that. I don't know what other people think.
I would support that, Michael. It's much more descriptive. The C API or S API don't really convey any specific meaning. And you know, in the Google world, if you were to do a Google search for C API, God knows what would come up. But if you were to do a search for Node API, then you get specific hits.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
That's true.
And it kind of seems like a reasonable, like we used to call it NAPI, which stood for Node. Now it's actually Node API, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So I can kind of explain it that way as well.
Yeah. Because I'm thinking like what I would do is go back to the tooling projects that I did to update the documentation, and the new name, the way I envision it would be, it would say node-API, and then in parentheses I could put formally n-API as a transition.
Right.
So I think it's much more natural.
Yeah, that certainly fits what I'm thinking. How about anybody else?
Kind of. I kind of see this as a missed opportunity to sort of let the JS native API sort of come into its own, but I do have to recognize that it is part of Node API. So we might end up calling, you know, like Node API create Boolean, even though it's not Node specific, you know, because it's like the Node way of doing Booleans, and everybody else has adopted that, it seems, all other engines.
Right. I guess you're saying
It'd be nice if we could find a name that distinguishes the fact that it's not Node specific, yet retains sort of the Node origins of it. But I don't. I mean, aside from having a really long prefix, I don't see how we could do that in a short and succinct way.
well, the other approach would be the Node specific ones would be Node_API. And the JS, the non-Node specific ones would be JS_API.
Well, I'd be super happy with that, because that would be very intuitive on any system and any implementation of this API, which was formerly known as NAPI.
Does that make sense to people?
Yeah, I'd love that.
Like,
If we could have JS API for everything that's not node specific, that would be amazing.
oh,
I agree with Gabriel, because if you want to create an API function for other runtime, you have only the JavaScript part in common, and that's it. So the other stuff, what now we have on Node API and underscore API, it depends on the runtime specifically. So it's right to have this difference.
I mean, basically, if we're going to add in all the new names.
I'm happy with Node_API and JS_API. It's this name explain what this API is for me. So C and API and S API, it is too generic. Yeah, I know that we provide the API stability. It's okay, and but a proper it's a quality of an API. So I'm I agree with Gabriel, with the idea that Gabriel say.
Right. The other issue is
I wanted to throw my 2 cents in.
yeah, go ahead.
I don't think that it should be renamed personally. I don't like. I think this last comment here of saying how it's being an API is so ingrained in the infrastructure everywhere that we have it. I don't. Like we have the NAPI resource, domain names, we'd have to change all of those. Like I just think that the amount of work that would be required, not only from us, but I don't know, from everybody that makes blog posts and everything. Like, I think the amount of work for the gain, I don't necessarily see the gain that great personally.
Yeah, that's also a good point, right? Yeah, go ahead, Nicola.
Yeah,
there are many projects, many external projects that now use an API. And for example, Babylon native. For example, node _rs that is a Rust wrapper. For example, Neon that is a Rust wrapper. So
IoT.js.
Yeah.
Well.
So what do you want to do to support this project? No, because I don't know if we need to help them to maybe I don't know support this transition that we want to do.
Yeah. So okay. So 2 points to that. This is all true. In terms of what you just wrote, the other is that it would run on older node versions. We never promised backwards compatibility, right? Only forward. So this may not be relevant, right?
Right. It just might be if people, which could cause.
Yeah. Okay. You're
They're
right
all
in
like,
that.
I guess it would have to be version NAPI
8.
Node API 8 would be okay.
Yeah. So
this would mean that the new methods, the new aliases would all have to be added as part of version 8.
At least, yeah.
At least, right.
So the other concern that came to my mind because of what Kevin and Nicola were saying is that changing the API would invalidate in some sense all the blog posts, that all the explainers, all the stuff that has appeared on the web, guiding people in the way they use an API, because now all the things that they mentioned there, they would go to the Node.js documentation for further depth, and they would not find it anymore, or at least they would find methods which have a completely different name, although similar to what they saw in the blog post, and then they would have to notice that it says in brackets, formerly blah blah blah, right? So it would definitely make it more difficult to follow whatever material has appeared, sort of like quote unquote like prose material that has appeared about an API. Any and all material like that would be a lot harder to follow if we did this. And there's substantial material out there.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like the balances between the name. There's some names for sure that we've taken the effort to remove from the project, and those would have the same. You could always make that same argument that it's causing some disruption.
Yeah.
I guess in this case, I think the link is a little bit less direct, right? Like the N is node, was always node.
Yeah.
And so
what's
the
an
link
example
to the
of another? What's an example of another word that was recently renamed in the node?
Things like blacklist.
Yes,
master is the other one. Like, there's the big effort to remove and change. So I actually recently, go ahead.
Yeah, master changing the main, for example.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
but
So
one distinction is that that effort is solely part of the organization, right? Like how much does our changing of the main branch affect, other
Well, but if you go back, that's just part of like, so
Yeah.
that's just part of changing master. I recently landed a PR which in cluster master was still being used. So we removed, basically there were two methods which we've doc deprecated, and we've updated all the documentation to refer to like is primary instead of is master.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, every single blog posting on Git would instruct you to merge to master, and those will all become
Right.
obsolete.
Yeah.
So
Okay. All right.
a-
So
yeah,
our effort is on par with that.
a counter example to this is GIP can also be pronounced as JIP, which can also be construed as being derogatory. But I don't see any efforts there to rename GIP.
There was an issue discussing that, I think, too.
Yeah, but it's like,
I think you're right though in pointing out that this one is not as direct as the others,
mhm.
right? Like it's more of a, you can read it that way versus it's actually got the name and it was used as that name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we need to be clear on the two distinctions: the overall name of the project, and then and that's more of a cultural concern. And then the other concern is the renaming of the symbols, and that is like a very deep technical concern.
Yeah. So yeah.
Right.
So basically, was James's intention doc only, or was his intention
Right.
deeper than that?
And I don't
That's
see anything from James that specifically calls out the symbols, but it may have been implied. He that may have
Right.
been implied.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the first thing that came to mind. I mean, that is the only permanent artifact that sort of captures this, and it is the only artifact that doesn't have the dash in it, because in documentation it's very easy to add the dash
Yeah.
for spoken language, but you cannot add a dash to a symbol. I
Right.
mean, we
Right.
could.
Right.
Well, actually, now that I think about it, we could just, if we're going to rename the symbol, we could just go with n_API, and that would be a much smaller change.
Right. But I don't think that's, I mean, I think the proposal is to get rid of, and I think, actually even what he's got, it's probably n API, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I think it was, and you see the suggestions are like SABI and CAPI. So I think it was coming from we use n-API in all the docs.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if the symbol part, maybe that was included, but it's certainly not called out, right?
Yeah. Honestly, it's the symbols that are most conducive to pronouncing it, as a word rather than as a sequence of letters.
Yes.
So in a way, the symbols are the ones which perpetuate this more than anything, more than any other part of the project. So
Correct.
So in that sense, I would think the symbols are the most important things to change. But on the other hand, they are also the deepest and hardest to change. So yeah. Anyway, I have to go. Sorry, it's
yes.
Okay, it is time.
That.
So is it fair to say, like, what I've got here, the team does share the concern with issues related to breaking content blog posts. We'll need to discuss. We'll continue the discussion in the next meeting, right? How about that?
Yeah.
If we could get clarifications from James, then we can continue the discussion.
Yeah, good. Yeah, we have the question in point number 1.
Okay.
But I don't want to dismiss Kevin's concerns either. So I hope we can continue that discussion also.
Well, exactly. I did include that. Like the team does share the concern about the issue related to breaking existing content, blog posts, etc.
Okay.
We will continue. So that's, Kevin, does that cover that adequately?
Yep.
Okay, great.
And I did change 2 to say, in terms of renaming, if there is a rename, we'd prefer that as opposed to
Yeah.
like, we prefer that name.
Mhm. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, well, thanks for everybody's time. We did have some other things that I tagged for discussion, but hopefully I forget what some of those are, but we can look at them next time.
Okay, great,
All right.
guys.
Great.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks. Talk to everybody later.
Okay.
All
Bye.
right,
Bye.
bye.
Bye.